I've tried to walk the line pretty carefully with this one between listening to reviews and the reception of this film versus trying to not spoil it for myself. So far, it's been quite a divisive film from what I've read. So, forewarning, I kind of want to try and get my take on why I think that is. So, without further ado, let's talk about X-Men in space. Okay, Eternals, which, by the way, this is a spoiler-free review. This is our third Marvel movie of this year, telling us the story of these immortal beings sent down to Earth to protect us throughout the centuries. And they're sent down by Celestials, which are essentially this universe's versions of gods. And we've seen them briefly in other films, but the catch is that they only intervene when these monsters called deviants intervene and attack the human race. And there's also just a couple of things you're just going to have to accept going into this film. Number one being that they just weren't around during the time of Endgame. This is going to happen quite often moving forward when they introduce us to new heroes, but I think it's a bit more annoying with this one because they're supposedly been around for the ages. But you're just going to have to get over that they didn't intervene. And similarly with number two, where you also probably think this amongst other superhero movies, but more so because they mention other heroes in these films, Doctor Strange probably should have known about everything going on right now, but for the better purposes of this being a solo movie, introducing us to these characters only, he's not in it. So we have this huge ensemble movie with 8 or 9 new characters to learn about through a story that takes place over thousands of years. There are elements in here that I really liked, however, I feel as a whole, the execution was just a little bit lacking. And that's not to say I dislike the film in no means, but I can see why there might be a divided opinion amongst the audience. And I think the biggest issue that I can think of coming into this movie is that this film has a lot to teach you. Not in terms of just the new characters, but also new elements that affects the whole MCU. And coming to mind of the most recent example for me would be the movie Dune that just came out a couple of weeks ago. But the reason why Dune succeeds at that hurdle is because at the end of the day, you don't really need to learn every character's names or the ins and outs of each thing. Whilst that scale is huge, at the end of the day, Dune is a very personal movie. Eternals, on the other hand, is a comic book movie where it wants you to learn and love every character being introduced. It's trying to teach you about this new system and new story that spans thousands of years, whilst trying to do it in a 2.5 hour movie. And it's dividing that attention amongst the cast, so you don't feel like you should love or care about any of the characters as much as the film wants you to. Big things happen in this movie, but with the pacing and the divided attention the audience has, it's hard for the emotions to be brought out that the director's trying to intend. Annoyingly as well, being ancient beings, they follow that trope where you just have to have an emotionless, soulless attitude towards everything. Apparently being ancient just limits your ability to give a shit. So whilst you might have this really impressive cast, there's not actually many that particularly stand out, as I feel they all played the same personalities. But, and I did start with the bad things for a reason, this movie does get a lot of things right still. This might be a bit of a long shot, but bear with me. To me, this almost felt like the first Thor movie. You had to have that first Thor movie in order for the audience to fall in love with the Thor in the Avengers and the Thor in the Ragnarok. This movie had to lay a lot of groundwork, and it's the movie after this that I think is going to shine because you're now playing with characters that you're familiar with. The designs are great and the CG is amazing, and when they use their powers, it's amazing to see. Though choreography and editing does feel a little bit choppy sometimes. Almost like a kid in a sandbox that's got too many toys to play with, and he's playing with a couple of toys and then forgets about the others, and then he remembers the one over there, and it feels a little bit like that sometimes. And I'm not going to talk about the whole cast as mentioned, but there were some really good standout performances here. And out of everyone, I think surprisingly my favourite performance was by Brian Tyree Henry, as I couldn't stand him in Godzilla vs Kong. I loved his character in this. Kumail Nanjiani also was really great in this film. And for the character that Richard Madden was trying to play, I do think he plays him very well. Angelina Jolie was so close to being awesome here as well, but personally I feel like they didn't utilise her enough. Every action scene with her in it was fun until it cut away from it all of a sudden. And Barry Keoghan was also on the verge of being great as well. So there's loads in this film that I really want to see more of. And the scale of this movie was awesome too. The Celestials in here were incredible, and I think they did a really good job with them. I just wish I saw a bit more from the deviants, or the monsters. I feel like they were going somewhere really interesting with these deviants until they got pushed aside all of a sudden for a different storyline. Okay, we should probably wrap things up before this gets too long. Is this a good movie? It's fine. You've probably heard this 1,000 times from everyone else, but this is a very un-Marvel-y movie. And they probably say that because this film actually has consequences and doesn't have a million jokes. I think unfortunately the hype put this movie on a really big pedestal. But I wouldn't say it's a bad film, I just wouldn't rush back to see it anytime soon. To me, it's certainly better than Black Widow, if that helps. It's laid enough foundations correctly for me to give a shit about what happens next. And with the mid and after credits, it looks like they have big plans. So with it being a Marvel movie and I think you're still going to get enjoyment out of this, I'd still recommend it. Maybe you've seen the movie already and you thought differently. If you did, let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts on Eternals were. If you liked this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe, it really does help me out. And as always, stay tuned for more reviews on movies, anime and video games. Until next time guys, take care. Bye bye.